Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Gullberg. I'm an infectious disease specialist, and I've been taking care of patients with coronavirus. We find ourselves now in the middle of a pandemic which has invoked a lot of fear in the public. And I want to just take a couple of minutes and talk about pandemics that have occurred in the world over the years. Talk a little about the lethality or the mortality of some of these pandemics that we've experienced going back to the beginning of mankind. Coronavirus has inundated our society, our culture, and changed how we've done things. But if you compare this virus to other pandemics, it pales in comparison. Just let's talk about the influenza virus. This is a worldwide virus. We get 3 to 5 million cases of influenza every year, and we get about 250,000 to 500,000 deaths. Peak incidence is usually from January to February and into April. In every decade in the U.S., about 500,000 people die from influenza. If you look at coronavirus, right now, as of May 22nd, there's been about 5 million cases in the world. So the mortality rate of coronavirus is about 6%. How does this compare to other viruses that have plagued men and women for hundreds and hundreds of years? Well, again, it pales in comparison. If we look at other viruses where the death rates have been between 20 and 50%, not 6%. MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which was caused by another coronavirus, very high mortality rate. Hantavirus, again, high mortality rate but decreased numbers. Smallpox devastated hundreds of millions of people throughout history with a very high mortality rate. As has Ebola virus, primarily in Africa, and dengue fever, which hits the tropics. So if we look at mortality rates from viruses, we've got viruses that are even more deadly, that have a 50 to 100% mortality rate, such as Marburg virus, the bird flu, and HIV, which has been with us since probably the 50s, but we started seeing it clinically 1981 is when we started seeing increased cases. So if we look at the 10 biggest pandemics that we've ever experienced, right now we're at 5 million cases of coronavirus, and everybody goes, wow, that's amazing. But if you look back throughout time, viruses have caused a lot of pandemics. In fact, influenza virus has caused 4 of the biggest pandemics ever. The first one in 1898 in Russia. The second one in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong virus in 1968. The Asian flu in 1956. And then the Spanish flu in 1918. The other virus that causes pandemics, of course, that has caused a pandemic is the HIV virus, which has killed over 36 million people. And of course, that continues to grow, especially in places like Africa. Other pandemics, we got a handle on them because of antibiotics. But prior to antibiotics, which came out in about the mid-1930s, the plague devastated our cities back in 165 AD, 540 AD, and back in the mid-1300s, where hundreds of millions of people were affected. And then let's not forget cholera, which is another bacteria that's had many pandemics that have killed people and is still killing a lot of people today. So coronavirus is miserable, but when you compare it to these other pandemics, it pales in comparison. Hopefully, over the next several months, we'll develop ways of treating this virus and getting back on track just in terms of normal life. Thanks, Dr. Gullberg, signing off.